Welcome to another episode of Off the Menu. I'm Vincent Franchini from Tumblr House, here with Charles Coulombe, Scourge of Social Justice Warriors.
You are the king of odd title creation, you know that.
You don't want to be the Scourge of Social Justice Warriors?
I don't mind, I'm sure they'd enjoy it.
They'd enjoy being the Scourge?
Of course they would. Masochism is a big part of our society today. People love being told what scumbags they are. That's what's behind the whole anti-Columbus thing. I mean, what is an anti-Columbus person really saying but, my very existence is proof that I'm evil?
Wow.
Think about it.
Yeah, okay.
Masochism is a big part of our national makeup now. They want to be kicked. And when someone comes up to you, bends over and says, "Kick me hard," what are you supposed to do? Exactly. You say, "No," and walk away.
Wow. Okay.
At least I hope you will, ladies and gentlemen. You know what it is, what we're getting up to now?
What are we getting up to?
Well, this is the October country. We're coming closer to Halloween.
Oh, that's true.
The veil between the worlds is getting thinner and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's what's supposed to happen in November, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, but it starts in October.
It starts in October.
Maybe September, or June, or maybe February, January. Maybe the veil really is just isn't that thick the way everyone says it is. That could be, I don't know.
So what's today?
Today, I'm glad you asked that question, because I can actually answer it.
Oh, good.
Today is the feast of St. John Cantius. Yeah, you don't know who he was. It doesn't matter. He was a Central European. He was a holy guy.
He's not American, so I don't need to care about him.
Well, why should you?
Yeah.
No, but tomorrow, however, is a very important feast day for me. Tomorrow is Blessed Karl of Austria.
Oh.
And there's an interesting thing about that, because October 21st is not the day of his death, which sadly was April 1st. Don't even start. I like to say the only 2 days of the year that I can be myself are Halloween and April Fools. I don't know why. Anyway, so the Emperor Karl was married to the Empress Zita, his wife, who's also up for canonization on the 21st. She's a servant of God. He's a blessed.
Whoa.
And I was present for his beatification in Rome. I'll just point that out. But the thing is, I knew then, way back in 2004, when they selected October 21st as the date, that they were pretty sure that sooner or later, one day, they'd both be canonized. And then I have no doubt that when that day comes, there'll be Saints Zita and Karl. And this will be their feast day on their wedding day, which is, if nothing else, a beautiful testimony by St. John Paul II, who was named Charles after the emperor, by the way, because his father was loyal to the emperor.
Oh, wow. Karol Wojtyła.
Yeah, he was named after the emperor.
Wow.
So it's kind of ironic that he was able to beatify him. But I have no doubt that he selected that date specifically as a way of honoring marriage and family.
Wow.
Because in addition to being a great ruler, which he was, and a great general, which he was also a tremendous husband and father.
Oh, I believe it.
No, it's true. So there you go. Although I do like St. John Cantius, who gave his name to one of the best churches in Chicago, but that's another story.
Okay.
All right. What do we got?
Well, firstly, for those of you who are still interested, don't forget Sean Leslie's Ghost Book.
Oh, especially with Halloween coming on. You want this one, believe me.
Absolutely. It's a perfect book this Halloween for Catholics. Also, if you're in the mood for Halloween content, don't forget last year's episode we did, the Halloween special. That was a very fun episode.
Yeah.
If you're in the mood, watch that one too.
I guess we'll do it next week.
We are good. Yeah, send in those Halloween questions because our Halloween special is next week. So we want a lot of good Halloween questions.
We see the old jack-o'-lantern sitting between us mediating.
Yeah. So also, thank you to everyone who bought The End of Democracy. I can't tell you how much we appreciate when you buy direct from TumblrHouse.com. So, I just can't help myself.
Why not? Why can't you help yourself?
I have to say a little bit more about this book. This book is so amazing that I just feel compelled to read a couple quotes from it. On my read-through for the book, I was plucking quotes for the internet, and in total, I came up with 50 quotes, standalone quotes for the internet. That is how potent this book is.
You realize you're going to need a picture of Christophe for the memes.
I do. But they'll be flowing soon. Those memes will be flowing. So I'm just going to read 4 short ones to kind of give you guys a feel for how potent this book is and what you can expect. All right. Progress can only exist when we are convinced we can do better and that things can be perfected. How is it then we became convinced we could do no better than democracy? You know, how is it? I mean, have we reached the pinnacle of progress?
Yes.
Are we living in the best of all possible worlds?
You betcha. I mean, don't forget that yesterday the governor of California officially signed into law a bill creating 3 genders in California.
I saw that.
Yeah, non-binary is the third. So you see, when, like the Spacing Guild in Dune, or like Holy Father, you can change reality with your mind. Why not?
It's par for the course for this governorship.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Democracy was invented for the purpose of bringing an oligarchy into power and keeping it there. That's very reminiscent of the secret oligarchy you're always talking about, the power behind the scenes, the money powers.
Although they're really not that secret. I mean, not to beat a dead horse, but how many Californians really want there to be 3 genders? And yet they've got it. Where does that come from? How's that democracy? I mean, again, ladies and gentlemen, you don't have to be thinking about secret Rosicrucian orders in back rooms. You know, if the majority of the people obviously don't want something and it gets imposed on them, that's what we call oligarchical rule.
We struck down gay marriage in our state, but the judges knew better, and they ruled it unconstitutional.
I salute my masters.
Absolutely.
I praise my owners with every single gesture at my command. I praise those who own me. I shower joy upon them. May they reek of it till their dying days. I love them, really.
Yes.
I feel better.
Good. All right. Next one is, some think Christianity has a vocation to imbue democracy with values. They are right in theory, but they will labor in vain. For democracy is a relativistic system and is hostile to any moral constraints it has not given itself.
Yeah, that's quite true.
You know, food for thought. In a relativistic system, any idea is possible. Any amount of evil is possible, so long as enough people are in favor of it.
And even if they aren't.
And even if they aren't, I
mean, like, I hate to hit the non-binary gender again.
Yeah.
And by the way, something interesting about that, that is for people registering birth certificates.
Wow.
That means that, let's say you and your wife had a kid tomorrow. You could register the child non-binary.
Wow.
Think about that. Think of the power that is giving you to screw up your kid's life.
That's true. So the person didn't even decide yet.
No! You decided for them that they were neither male nor female.
That's so unbelievable. That's so beyond everything. I mean,
in the immortal words of Betty Davis in All About Eve, buckle your seatbelts, boys. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
Ain't that the truth? Okay, final one.
All right.
What has the democratic state made of this society over which it has expanded its empire? Has it sought to preserve it from moral degradation, or from the onslaughts of ideologies and particular interests? Has it established safeguards to protect the populations from the consumerism, indebtedness, and inflation, which has served the money powers, the democratic state has done none of these things. On the contrary, it has become the docile servant of these forces and has put its political and legislative powers at their service.
I have to disagree. The democratic state has created a big steaming heap of perfection.
A big steaming heap of perfection.
Yes. A big steaming fragrant heap of perfection.
Fragrant heap of perfection.
That's right. It's like it's thoroughly perfumed. Well, but no, it is a book that one can't recommend enough. See, the problem is, as Christophe, the author of the book, Christophe Bouffard-Chazal, points out very well, is that democracy has created a world of its own where you can't even question it. You know, it's like questioning whether the ground is underfoot and the sky overhead.
Right.
You know, you can't even think outside that particular box.
That's why I love that first quote, because we're all about progress. Well, how is it progress is stopped and we can no longer question democracy?
Because if you do, you're bad.
It's funny how that works, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're pushing the envelope of everything. And we don't even know why we're pushing the envelope. For sexuality, for all these things. But for democracy, no. It must remain pure, untouched.
I'd like to push Governor Brown's envelope.
Wouldn't we all?
No, the poor old man. Who knew that one day the State House would be a retirement home for the senile? Who knew? Anyway.
Who knew? But if there are anyone out here who disagree with some of the things, it's perfectly fine to disagree. We don't expect people to agree with everything because we've all been programmed against these ideas.
The trick is to talk about them. Expand the conversations, our liberal friends say.
Absolutely. The goal of this whole thing, this book, is to bring people's minds in a place that they haven't been before, and to generate a discussion that we've never had before. That is the whole point of this. And that's all we ask, is an open mind.
In the immortal words of Edgar Allan Poe, to dream such dreams as men have never dreamt before.
That's a good line. All right.
What do we got?
Let's get started.
Oh boy, questions and answers. I don't know. I'm feeling recalcitrant all of a sudden. Maybe I don't want to answer anybody anything.
Wow,
then again, maybe
you'd
not.
have a tough time at the show then. Okay.
Maybe not. Let's see what we got.
Okay, Rob Riforgiate asks, how did Mr. Coulombe become a monarchist? He's the first American monarchist I've encountered, and additionally the first advocate of monarchy as a pure idea. That is, some Russians may support a return of the Tsar, some Frenchmen may support a return of the Bourbons, or even the emperors, but I have not yet read or met someone who advocates monarchy qua monarchy. Very interesting. I'd be fascinated by his journey.
Well, at an early age, I was kidnapped by a roving band of monarchists. No, that's not actually what happened. Well, that's a good question, and it's a little complex.
Can I start off with one important thing? So your family, were they monarchists?
Yes and no and yes. I mean, there was a lot of, for reasons I'll explain in a moment, there was a lot of what you might call monarchist sentiment. But certainly my father would never have questioned the legitimacy of the republic in which we live. Although he pointed out things about it that were wrong.
Okay.
My dad had fought in World War II. And don't forget, too, that this was the great land of opportunity, whence our ancestors came from Quebec. And it certainly is true that we've done very well by this country.
Right.
And so the institutions are part of a package deal. But having said that, my dad was also very fond of the Bourbons of France because they were the ones who sent my ancestors to North America and set us up, as you might say. He was very fond of the Stuarts and the whole Jacobite thing because he had a good, healthy dollop of Scots blood. And so I was brought up not just with things French, but with the idea, the memory of Culloden and Bonnie Prince Charlie and all that kind of stuff. On my mother's side, she was, because of her family and her connections, she was very much a fan of the Habsburgs of Austria, and somewhat of the Romanovs of Russia. And of course, coming out here to California, you can't, with the missions and everything else, you can't help but be aware of the role of the Spanish monarchy. And despite the moronic attempts of morons, most morons' attempts are moronic. And, the one is an adjective, the other is a noun, but they're intimately connected, especially when they're in power. But at any rate, despite the attempts of people to attack the Spanish today and all that, theirs is a wonderful inheritance. And the role the Spanish monarchy played in the colonization of the Americas is an extraordinary one. So, I did not have the anti-monarchical prejudice that a lot of other people have. You raised in our setup. And then I got to know, well, there were several things. Firstly, it became obvious to me that Catholicism in Europe and in Latin America had been intimately connected to monarchy, and that America was the exception. But why should it be the exception? If Americans are human beings, and I have every reason to believe we are, why should the dynamics that operate outside our borders not mean something inside our borders as well? That's the one thing. The second thing, of course, I was very much understood from an early age the idea of the kingship of Christ. Well, he's King of Kings. He's not president of presidents, bureaucrat of bureaucrats, that kind of stuff. I studied the coronation rites of Christendom, and that had a big effect on me, because it gave a whole idea of rulership that is simply alien to the American experience. Then, I suppose, the nail in the coffin, if you will, and what he says about my having an interest in monarchy beyond nationality is quite true. And that's because, as I studied the counter-revolutionaries in France, the Vendée and all that, the Carlists in Spain, the Jacobites in the British Isles, and a lot of others elsewhere, I began to realize that despite their national differences, they had a lot of ideological things in common. Now, what were those ideological things? Firstly, the place of the church in civil life. All right. Now, if you read Quas Primas, the encyclical 1926 of Pius XI establishing the Feast of Christ the King, he makes it very obvious that every state, regardless of faith, and I realize that in non-Catholic states this would be difficult, but still, has an obligation to honor Christ as King because he is objectively Christ the King of everything. And it seemed to me that Catholic kingship, with the right of the quasi-sacramental rite of coronation, does the best job of doing that. And also, of course, the rule will get all kinds of graces that a fellow who's just inaugurated or whatever won't get. All right. The notion of the king is first layman of the realm and judge and leader of the armies and all that. In other words, as chief executive rather than merely a figurehead. That was a big thing that all these guys had in common. The local liberties at the same time. In other words, royal power being balanced by local attachments, local liberties, local powers. You see that in all of them. And these similarities are things that they themselves would likely not see. They would not see how really closely connected their individual combats were. But as an American, it was much easier for me to see this. A late friend of mine, Thomas Molnar, when he reviewed my book of poetry, which...
White Cockade.
That's the one. He actually made reference to that in his review. He said that it was precisely because I was an American I was able to look at Christendom and at Europe and at monarchy as a whole piece in a way that actual Europeans could not. And I think that is certainly a great value for being born an American. For a European, you say monarchy, the first thought is Habsburg, Romanov, Bourbon, whatever theirs is. But for the American, we don't have that. And in my book, Star Spangled Crown, the monarchy had to be basically created from almost nothing. And the bits and pieces that were gathered together, they were pulled together the same way that our national union was in the first place. You know, it's a little bit synthetic.
Mm-hmm.
But a good part of governance is myth. That doesn't mean it's a lie, but it means that it's not a fact. If you see the difference.
Okay.
Every policeman should be brave. That's the myth. But it's true.
I see.
The fact is that Officer Riley is on the take, and he's a bloody coward.
I see.
But the fact of Officer Riley being a coward and a crook does not make the bravery of policemen untrue.
I see.
So, anyway.
So it seems like you arrived at your position through reading.
Reading and also talking to monarchists here and abroad. You know, I was privileged to know a number of the old Triumph group.
Oh.
From Triumph magazine, Gary Potter, who thank God is still with us, Fritz Williamson, Thomas Molnar, Farley Clinton, a lot of these guys. And the other thing, too, I should point out, is that I became more and more aware of just how much this country was unconsciously formed by monarchy. And that's where all our roots are. That's why your notaries public and your governors and your coroners and your sheriffs, all these institutions we have, they all come to us from medieval Europe.
I see. Yeah, I have the utmost respect for all monarchists because you're not born a monarchist. We don't have monarchist families. The way you become a monarchist, at least what I've seen with all these young gentlemen, is almost without exception, they're intelligent and they read a lot. And through this reading, they're able to get outside of this American bubble perspective. And that's how you become a monarchist, is getting outside of this American perspective that everyone's being programmed with.
It is, and of course it's also important to bear in mind that getting out of that bubble does not mean coming to hate your country. Quite
Right.
the opposite.
Right.
I consider myself second to no one in my love of this country, in my patriotism for it. But you see, I love the country that really is, not the ideology, not the institutions. And when I say that, I mean, it's like in mutatis mutandis, it's like with the church. I don't love the church because of the priests and the bishops. I don't even love the church because of the Pope, and that was true under popes I liked. I love the church because she's the mystical body of Christ. That's why I love the church. I love the sacraments. I love the shrines. I love the masses. I love the rules, the dogmas. I love it all. But the people that carry it on, that's always another story. Mutatis mutandis again. Each of us are human beings, which should be a very noble thing. And yet we all of us know human beings who fall short of that, even ourselves sometimes. Hard to believe that may be.
Yeah. Another characteristic of monarchists is that the vast majority, at least the visible ones, are men.
Yes. Seemingly.
All you lady monarchists, where are you at? Are you gonna leave us men in the trenches taking grenades? Is that what you're gonna do?
They're gonna bring tea and scots. We'll see.
I mean, where are you at? We need some. You need to represent.
Well, I think that there are a lot of lady monarchists out there. It's just that, number one, and this is going to sound ironic, most ladies I know who are monarchists are also great believers in traditional gender roles.
Wow, I'm surprised you're using that word. I thought you loathed that word.
I do love that word, but sometimes, you know,
Okay.
I hate the phrase gender roles. I mean, it's like using it is, I have to use it because I have to describe what is simple reality and has been transformed into a party.
Okay.
You know, we're members of the eater party. The what? Oh, you know, the people who believe you should eat.
Okay.
You know, obviously then you have the non-eaters. The eaters are exploiters. This is the world we're in. You know, and then of course there are the breathers.
The breathers,
You have to take air into their lungs? Oh yeah, breathing. Talk about subversion. Oh, just another breather. Anyway, but a lot of lady monarchists are quite content to let the men take the front row. That's one element of it. Also, I've known a lot of ladies who have been not necessarily monarchists, but shall we say royals watchers.
Royals watchers?
Royals watchers. They can tell you everything that Kate Middleton wore for her wedding, for instance.
Okay, so that qualified. Okay.
Well, the categorize you as a royals watcher. You may not be a monarchist, but you're really staring at the royals, aren't you?
That's interesting.
I mean, I couldn't tell you what you wore, actually.
Okay. So your thesis is that all the lady monarchists are lurking in the shadows somewhere.
Not all of them, but a lot of them.
But a lot of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Waiting to bring tea and crumpets when we go to war.
Okay. Okay, next question is from Rosie.
Hello, Rosie.
Protestants claim that the just war theory is not preached by the early church fathers. Is this true? It's got to be true, right? I mean, Protestants are always correct about early church, right?
No, it's not true. Next.
No,
it's not. I mean, St. Ambrose, St. Augustine certainly talked about it. Tertullian was against Christians going to the army. But the fact of the matter is that the large number of soldier martyrs before Constantine tells you that Catholics considered going to the army the thing to do. Now, he said, although if you were made to worship the emperor, then you'd let yourself be martyred. Now, when we became legal, that was when people first really began going on about just war. And St. Ambrose, for instance, dealt, you know, what's funny is that with Protestants, their dealing with just war is very simplistic. I'll put it this way. Let's say you're a young second lieutenant, right? And you're in a war that, objectively speaking, the United States is invading the Bahamas because we want to. And you're the leader of a platoon of infantry. Now, for Protestants who are into just war, they might say, "Oh, you've got to refuse to go in on that because it's an unjust war. We attacked the Bahamas without any provocation, and now we're just going to annex them." But St. Ambrose would tell you, no. There are degrees. You're not a commander of an army. You're not a sovereign. That's not your area. Your area is to ensure that you conduct your part of the war justly.
Mm.
So what does that mean? It means you don't kill civilians. You know, unless they're attacking you. It means you don't destroy civilian food supplies. It means you wage a just war.
Mm.
So it's a little more complex.
It's that principle of subsidiarity.
Precisely right. You can't handle what's above you. You have to handle what you're responsible for.
Yeah.
And that, but anyway, to answer the question, Rosie, no, they did. And your Protestant friends are wrong. Sorry. What else we got?
Okay. Our old friend Despot Romanicus of Obscuria sent in another question for you.
Well, firstly, let me thank all of our friends there in Obscuria. All of you hard-working laborers, you miners, farmers. We especially want to thank you for the donations you sent in. And I think also shout out to all our other friends scattered throughout the micronations. Prince Michael of Zenda, Baroness Dottie, His Excellency Lord Fitzgerald, the whole kind of gang of you, thank you very much. And to those who, the crew of His Sufficiency ship, the Karn 2, at this moment docked in Chrysalis Harbor, thanks, guys.
Thank you so much. Okay, Romanicus asks, what would a proper Catholic state do to non-Catholics and people with undesirable ideologies, like liberalism and socialism, in matters of state policy? Should they be left alone but forbidden to spread their beliefs? Should they be segregated from society? Or is another policy preferred?
They should be spanked and put to bed without supper. No. Well, I mean, history shows us, frankly. It all depends. There's not one size fits all solution. It depends upon what kind of a threat they may present to church and state. They should never be allowed to publicize their erroneous teachings or to proselytize. That's the first thing. With some groups, aggressive proselytization is part and parcel of who they are. With others, it isn't.
Mm-hmm.
With the communists, the Jehovah's Witnesses, or the Muslims, they've got to proselytize. With the Quakers, they don't.
So what do you do?
Well, obviously, if they proselytize, then they must go to jail.
Communists go to jail?
Yes, communists go to jail. But if they,
what if there's a lot of them? What if there's like 5 million?
Then you have to consider. This is where the real question comes in. It's trying to suppress an evil in one way, likely to cause more evil.
That's a very ambitious question.
Well, yeah, but it's also part and parcel of the whole issue, and it always has been. Is if trying to do something brings about more evil than good, that's called prudence,
Okay, so.
So, for instance, if I'll give you an example. I mean, when James II was inherited the British throne, he was a Catholic, but the coronation rite was Protestant,
Right.
and included receiving communion. Now, he asked the Pope what to do. The Pope could have said, well, no, you can't receive the crowning and anointing at the hands of a heretical archbishop. But instead, what he said was, go ahead and get crowned and anointed, just don't receive communion. And then have a mass later that day and receive there. And that's what he did.
Okay. So
a lot depends upon the concrete circumstances in which you find yourself.
So with the Spanish Inquisition, with Isabel, she just exiled everybody, right?
Well, that wasn't the Inquisition, but yeah, she exiled them.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
She exiled them, and bear in mind, in her case, it was because she had reason to believe that they were acting in collusion with the Ottoman Empire.
Mm.
And having just thrown the Moors out, and see the Ottomans raging through Eastern Europe,
Mm-hmm.
she had no desire for a new rematch. And there was also the fact that not only might they be in collusion with the Ottomans, but her people wanted to slaughter them.
Oh, okay. So you can't just keep them in jail or anything because the people will get at them.
Well, yeah, I mean, and keeping them in camps like that would be extremely inhumane anyway.
Right.
So, wouldn't it be better to ship them to whatever country would be willing to have them, where they could lead more or less normal lives?
Right.
That's what she was faced with. So, is it better to keep them at large, where they will be killed by your other subjects, and possibly cooperate with an Ottoman attack? Keep them in jail forever, which would be keeping them in jail forever, or sending them to North Africa, where they were assured of a nice welcome. Well, guess what?
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
And the Ottoman Empire. A lot of the Spanish Jews went to the Ottoman Empire, which is why to this day, in Constantinople and Greece, you can still find people speaking Ladino, which has the same relation to Spanish that Yiddish does to German.
Latino?
Ladino.
Oh, Ladino.
Ladino.
Oh, okay.
Latino is an individual of Mexican descent living in California.
Oh, got that. Okay, yeah. I haven't heard that before. Huh. Okay, next question. Here's an early Halloween question from
Oh boy.
a lady admirer.
Woo! A lady admirer, ladies and gentlemen. I wonder if the lady admirer in question would refuse to greet a gentleman caller. Sounds very Tennessee Williams. All right, what do we got?
Okay. Is today's Wicca the same as witchcraft in the past? Were witches actually involved with Satanism, say in New England in the 1600s? Or in England? Was it just the English-speaking world that was obsessed with witches? Or did they also exist elsewhere? Would you like to do this one at a time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do the first one.
Okay.
Is Wicca...
The same as witchcraft?
No. Wicca is an age-old religion that goes all the way back to the 1920s, when it was invented by a lady called Margaret Murray. She first advanced the idea that the witches of the Middle Ages were simply nature-loving pagans. And then in the 1940s, a gentleman called Gerald Gardner commissioned the late Aleister Crowley to compose some Wicca rituals. And they've been going ever since.
Those Wicca rituals aren't witchcraft per se?
Well, they call them that, but that doesn't mean they are. They're not the witchcraft of the Middle Ages by any stretch. And, Wiccans of today tend to be people who are...
So it doesn't, I mean, I don't know anything about this, but doesn't it evoke demon spirits and stuff like that to do your bidding?
No, not really. They're into worshiping nature and all that kind of thing. And even then, I mean, some of them, remember that Wicca is not a really creedal religion. So some of them will tell you they don't even believe in their gods. They see them as reflections of their own personality.
Okay.
Some of them are, trying to get in touch with the pagan religions and whatever their own nationality was. And a lot of them, most of them, lay great stress on the wheel of the year. And see, this is something where we've once again fallen down on the job.
Yeah.
As we Catholics have ceased less and less to live by the liturgical year, which is a natural rhythm within each of us, our Wiccan friends have really jumped on it and, shall we say, ridden what they call the wheel of the year all the way home.
Wow.
Because the changing of the seasons is part of the God-given matrix of humanity. You wonder why I'm fascinated with the different holidays and all that. Well, it's imprinted on us. Each of our lives reflects, in a sense, the growth and decline of the year. The difference being that ours stop, whereas there's always next year, chronologically. Of course, some Wiccans would say that our lives go on too. It's the wheel of karma, borrowed from Buddhism. And that wheel just goes on and on and on.
Okay.
It's deep, like the windmills of your mind. Look up the lyrics, ladies and gentlemen, the windmills of your mind. You'll see what I mean. Very deep.
Sounds deep.
What are you going to learn for?
Were witches actually involved with Satanism like in New England in the 1600s?
I believe so. There is a book I recommend, Witchcraft at Salem, by a gentleman called Owen Chadwick. There were a lot of innocent people killed at Salem, but there are a few people, including the Reverend John Burroughs, who probably were up to something. And as Chadwick points out, their accounts of their practice square very closely with accounts of witchcraft in Europe, of which they could have had no knowledge, other than there being an actual connection.
Wow, so that's like demonic knowledge.
No,
what's the word?
Not necessarily demonic. I mean, I know how Catholics do things in Italy, because we practice.
But you just said they'd have no knowledge.
Because we practice the same religion.
Okay.
If I describe a mass, especially if I were describing it before 1965.
That's true.
If
Okay.
I described a mass, it would sound very much like a description of a mass in Italy.
I see. So they brought it over from Europe.
Exactly.
Okay.
At any rate, Chadwick presents or Chadwick Owen, whatever his name was. Anyway, he presents a very compelling case for the idea that there was some witchcraft in Salem, and certainly the plethora of weird cults that came out of New England afterwards would lend a little credence to the idea that something or other strange was happening. And don't forget that you've got two things going on at once. You have this weird underground quasi-Satanism, but you've also got this nasty Calvinism. And the God of the Calvinists, if I were not a nice person, I would say behaves a lot like the devil.
How is that?
Gleefully condemning most of his people to damnation.
Mm.
I mean, our God, the God of the Catholics, he allows people to choose damnation, but he doesn't like it, not happy about it, not glad to see them frying forever and laughing.
Well, the God of the Old Testament was pretty harsh.
He was harsh, but even he didn't enjoy destroying his people.
It's true.
There's no suggestion in Genesis that God had a good time with the flood.
It's true. Okay, so what about non-English speaking countries?
Well, yeah, I mean, frankly, witchcraft, and by witchcraft, in this case, I'm not talking about Wicca. I'm talking about the notion that an individual can surrender themselves to whatever that given culture sees as ultimate spiritual evil in return for some kind of power.
Mm.
That is witchcraft. Now, to this day, pagan peoples in Africa and China murder witches, people they consider witches. It's a universal motif amongst mankind. The stricture against witches in the Bible, thou shalt not suffer a witch to live, it's not in the New Testament, it's in the Old Testament. Because the Jews were very much afraid of witches. And you have the Witch of Endor.
The Witch of Endor, yeah.
Who gave her name to the mother of Samantha Stevens in Bewitched.
What?
Remember the show Bewitched?
Yeah, Bewitched.
You remember Samantha's mother?
I don't remember her. No, I don't.
No, too bad. She was wonderful. But her name was Endora.
Oh.
Which is after the Witch of Endor.
Okay.
You see the kids? You learn a little bit about really silly 60s pop culture every time you tune in.
You like Bewitched more or I Dream of Jeannie?
Oh, Bewitched.
Yeah.
Bewitched.
Good.
I mean, I watched I Dream of Jeannie, but I prefer Bewitched.
Yeah. Okay. Next question is from Leonardo.
DiCaprio?
I don't know. It could be.
All right.
Just says Leonardo. What is your opinion on the death penalty?
I don't want to undergo it.
No?
No.
Well, that's reasonable.
All right. No, I mean, I have a weird feeling I know where this is going.
Yeah,
But-
you'd probably be right. Okay.
No pope ever expressed a problem with the death penalty until after Vatican II. So,
Wait, no pope has ever. What does that mean? Has ever expressed a problem with it? Did they expressly permit it?
oh yes, in the papal states, you betcha. But what happened was that you had several popes, especially John Paul II and Benedict XVI, who had witnessed its wholesale abuse by the Nazis and communists. And then, I suppose, more recent prelates, noticing that the death penalty isn't popular amongst the people they look up to and want to cultivate. Well, you know, if it's trendy, it's good. So that would be an important thing for some of them. But that doesn't mean that it's true.
Well, Pope Francis, you know, he really recently talked about the death penalty just maybe a week or so ago.
Who's he to judge?
Now, he's not judging. He says in itself, the death penalty in itself is contrary to the gospel.
Judgment.
No, the gospel is making the judgment.
No, he's judging. He's judging. Also, he says he has non-awareness. How he could read if he was that non-aware? Go ahead.
All right. He says, quote, in itself, the death penalty is, quote, in itself contrary to the gospel because it is voluntarily decided to suppress a human life, which is always sacred in the eyes of the Creator, and of which God only in the final analysis is the true judge and guarantor. He also said it is, quote, an humane measure that humiliates human dignity in any way it is pursued.
Well, he knows all about humiliating human dignity, that's for sure. He's an expert at that. No, I mean, that contradicts what his predecessors have said at different times. So, you know, he's entitled to his opinion.
What about when Jesus said, those who live by the sword die by the sword?
He was right. That's why there are no pacifists quite like soldiers.
Ooh, that's a good point.
I'm sorry to intrude reality into any issue, especially when the dear Holy Father is concerned. But, again, that's his personal opinion, and he's certainly entitled to it. It's a free universe.
So you feel that Catholic social teaching is pretty well fleshed out on this issue, or is it not well?
Yeah,
defined?
I mean, it's pretty well fleshed out. I mean, the death penalty is something that should be used sparingly. But without it lurking in the closet, you have no ultimate penalty. I mean, Pius IX was a great one for pardoning those sentenced to death. But you see, that in itself has a very useful thing. Why? Because if you're sentenced to death, and you're morally certain you're going to die, it's not like you're being taken care of for years on death row in California.
Mm-hmm.
And then along comes the Pope and he pardons you. That's really something. That's an amazing thing.
Yeah.
But he can't pardon you if there's no death penalty, now can he? The other thing, of course, that comes to mind is the famous story about Louis XVI. The Vendée was the region in the west of France. And before the revolution, it was the death penalty for smuggling, especially salt.
Mm-hmm.
So, this one kid was the only son of a widow. He was captured, arrested for smuggling, and he was sentenced to die. His mother walked all the way to Versailles from the Vendée, confronted King Louis XVI in his garden, and told him, I'm a poor widow from the Vendée. My only son and my sole support is about to be executed for smuggling salt. So the king pardoned him.
Wow.
Well, a few years later, the French Revolution breaks out, and the Vendée rises up, and this now somewhat older kid becomes one of the leaders. And they asked him, why are you doing this, when you were arrested by the royal troops before? And he said, I owe my life to my king. He has every right to claim it now.
Wow.
So, I appreciate the Holy Father's right to agree with those who are fashionable. That's beautiful. But he's not in agreement with his predecessors on this point.
Okay. Next question is from April Brinker. My grandmother was French Canadian, and as best I can tell, Charles and I are 6 cousins.
Hiya, cuz.
I'd love to carry some Quebecois traditions on with my family, but my grandmother is no longer with us. God rest her. Does Charles have any suggestions of cultural or religious French Canadian traditions I can celebrate with my children?
Oh, yes. There are several. First and foremost, I guess April is a girl's name, so it's a mother probably.
Yeah.
On New Year's Eve, before they go to bed, have your husband bless your children. And really, if, which I hope is not the case, if you don't have a husband around, then you can do it yourself. But
how do you do that? You touch them, or?
Yeah. I bless you in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. Je te bénis dans le nom du Père, au Père, le Fils, et le Saint-Esprit. So, you just, touch, make the sign of the cross over their hands. That's very important. That starts the new year off right, you see, the annual blessing. Candlemas is was a very important feast for the French Canadian. le chandelier. So be sure you go and get a blessed candle and bring it home. And if anybody's sick or if you've got any sort of problems in the home, light that candle. Our cousins in Louisiana would light it during hurricanes. So that's, Candlemas is a big day with us. The Holy Week, of course, Easter, very important days. Our celebration of them isn't too different from that of the other Catholics, but they are very, very important, especially Good Friday. When June comes around, of course, there's two things going on. If you're in a position to make bonfires on St. John's Eve, that was a big deal for us.
Where do you guys do it? On the beach? Where could you
so
do that?
there's the beach or the mountains.
Wow. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Or in the middle of Hollywood.
Okay.
On Hollywood Boulevard, we'd get a trash can and set the...
Yeah.
You don't think we did that? We didn't. Anyway, but the 24th of June, the next day, is the Jour de Juin, Saint Jean-Baptiste. St. John the Baptist is like St. Patrick for us. So, what you want to do is learn to make a few of our wonderful French-Canadian dishes. I'm thinking here of tourtière, which is the meat pie, croton, which is like a pâté, sort of. Or if you're really lazy, poutine. Now, poutine really is not an ancient dish of ours. It's not. But it's very popular in Quebec now. And what you do is you take French fries, you put brown gravy and cheese curds and bacon and anything else you want. Yes, it'll clear out your arteries. It flushes them out. It does. It's low-cal.
Wow.
You don't believe me? You get that look of disbelief.
I can't believe that dish. That's an interesting concoction, I guess you could say.
Poutine?
Yeah.
It's good for you.
Yeah.
I think I got these chins. They're not implants, these are real.
Oh,
It's all
wow.
me. Yeah,
Really?
no implants. Also, if you've got the ability, game is a great dish for us. The jour de juin, venison, anything like that, if you can get your hands on something like that. The Marian feast days are very, very big. Our Lady of the Assumption, you want to celebrate a lot of flowers, blessing of fruit, things like that. It's actually the French National Day, and it's the Acadian National Day, but we celebrate it too. You come into September, of course, Our Lady's birthday and Holy Cross Day are very, very big. All Saints and All Souls, huge, huge days. If you can make your way to your family cemetery, you want to light a candle on All Saints Night. And if you're lucky enough to go anywhere where they do the Vespers of the Dead, do. For those who aren't aware, in the traditional liturgy of the church, the Vespers on the night of the 1st of November are really amazing. Because you have the second Vespers of All Saints, and then they go immediately into the Vespers, into the first Vespers of All Souls, the Vespers of the Dead. And you suddenly go from light to dark.
Wow.
It's really amazing. All Souls Day is big, and with us, the whole month of November, the month of the Holy Souls, is a huge, huge thing. Be sure to pray for your dead every day. On All Souls Day, if you can manage it, have a picnic or something in your family plot. If not, well, then don't. Then you're in the back in the build-up to Christmas, which is, again, a big day for us. Although, with us, traditionally, we didn't really give out much in the way of gifts on Christmas, but rather the Epiphany, New Year's Day, some people, St. Nicholas's Day, December 6th. Christmas was more of a strictly religious holiday. But so there you go. Oh, and the Epiphany, be sure that the three kings come. That's very important.
I know a couple people that do that, the gifts exchange, and it kind of on the with the Three Kings, and it kind of makes sense because they gave gifts to
the Christ child.
Yeah. So, and I like that too because it keeps Christmas with a purely religious connotation. So the big deal is not the presents; it's Christ.
That's right. That's why. Although for some reason, ladies and gentlemen, this is just I just remembered this. It slipped by my head. This is not really apropos, save as it touches upon the way we sort of distort Christmas. Japan, prior to World War II, had never celebrated Christmas.
Okay.
Then we invaded, or we didn't invade, we defeated them, and we occupied them. So the Tokyo department stores, seeing these Americans running around and knowing that Americans celebrate Christmas and they buy stuff, and wouldn't it be great to get people to buy stuff and to celebrate Christmas by buying stuff? So in 1945 or 46, all the department stores, I forget which year, started celebrating Christmas with Christmas sales and all this. But the one of them, again, their ideas were a little distorted. Their celebration was highlighted by Santa Claus on a cross.
What? Oops. They just... So I guess something got lost in translation.
Yeah, I'll say, it got way lost in translation. Santa Claus on a cross, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh no!
Yeah,
that's terrible.
Yeah, well, the American authorities had to explain to them that this really was not how it was done.
Oh man!
Well, it's Christian. Santa Claus has to do with Christmas. The cross is Christian. It makes sense.
He killed Santa Claus.
Well, they didn't really think he was dead. He was just sort of on the thing, maybe singing a Christmas carol.
Wow, that is so. What a mixed imagery there. That's.
Yeah, I know. That's just this is the kind of nonsense that's tucked up in here. I've told you there's like a screaming freak show between my ears. I've told you that.
Yeah.
Now you know.
Yeah.
What else you got?
Still trying to recover from that. Okay. Okay. Our final question today is from Michael Hunsinger.
Okay.
Is there a way to rediscover the traditions of our ancestors and make them real, instead of the imitations, those customs that we have today? For example, how we eat traditional food on Thanksgiving while watching football, or have a Star Wars-themed Easter egg hunt. How do we return to our roots when the traditional way we would have learned these things is gone? Love those Star Wars-themed egg hunts.
I know. Great Santa Claus on a cross. All right. Well, actually, it's pretty much the same as earlier. There are actually a lot of books that tell you about these sorts of customs. There was a German priest whose name escapes me right now. He was the chaplain of the Von Trapp family.
Oh, right.
And he wrote the Christmas book, the Easter book, the Holy Day book.
Yeah.
Handbook of Christian Festivals. Those are the titles, and I can't think of his name.
Yeah.
But they talk a lot. He talks in those particular books a lot about how the different days are celebrated around the Catholic world. But you've got things like Joanna Bogle's Book of Feasts and Seasons, which talks about this kind of thing. There are a lot of books out there. There's another one, again, I can't think of the author. She was a lady. She wrote a number of books, one of which sticks in my head, so I can tell you the title and you can look it up. And that's Christmas to Candlemas in the Catholic Home. And she wrote a lot of other books like that. But there was a period in the early 60s in particular, late 50s, early 60s, when a lot of American Catholics were interested in just this, in decommercializing, regaining a sense of Catholic wholeness and holiness to their holiday celebration. You can't do it. I mean, you first purge the obvious stuff, all right? No Star Wars-themed Easter egg hunts.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I know. Thanksgiving, I mean, turn off the game, you know? Mind you, to my way of thinking, there's nothing that says Halloween more than a Twilight Zone marathon. But if you like, though, watch some Thanksgiving-themed movies. If there are such things. I don't know. Judgment at Salem or something. Well, Thanksgiving is a little hard because it's a Puritan holiday. But as far as the others go, just take the commercial stuff out. The other thing you might do is a series of holiday books, books about American holidays, which was called, believe it or not, Our American Holidays, by a gentleman, and now I can remember the name.
Oh, good.
Is that great?
Yeah.
Robert Haven Schaufler. Schauffler. Robert Haven Schaufler, or Schaufler. He wrote books about Christmas and Easter and Washington's birthday and Lincoln's birthday and Thanksgiving. You know, a mixture of civil and religious days.
Mm-hmm.
But they were collections of things about the day in question. There were sometimes exercises to be done in schools, because you probably are too young to remember this, same for you. But it used to be in schools, even in public schools, that they would have what were called exercises to commemorate a particular holiday, whether it was Christmas or Washington's birthday.
Okay.
And this would, there'd be recital of several poems and singing of some songs and things like that.
You would do that.
Well, there you go.
I did it for MLK. Martin Luther King.
Yeah, I don't.
You don't like Martin Luther King?
I don't dislike him.
Okay, that's a very diplomatic answer.
Well, I mean, I didn't know him. He went to the Highlander Folk School.
You don't like what he represented?
It depends on what he represented. If you're talking about
civil rights,
if you see him as
equality.
representing civil rights and equality and all that, I have no problem with him at all. If you see him as representing adultery and communism, then I have a problem.
Why would I see him representing adultery and communism?
Well, because he was a known adulterer, on the one hand, and on the other hand, because he went to the Highlander Folk School, which was a sort of a communist setup in Tennessee. Yeah. I mean, my dad was all for civil rights, but he didn't like Dr. King because of the Highlander Folk School.
Okay. So anyhow, back to the
back to the real question.
Yeah, back to the real question.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to reconquer these things. These books, Evelyn Verger-Beertz, whatever her name is, wrote a book on A Movable Feast, I think it was called, about cooking for the different holidays.
Oh, that was Hemingway. That's what Hemingway called Paris.
Yes, I know, but this was a different book.
Oh.
By a different person.
Oh.
Anyway, there are a lot of these sorts of books around. You can use them to reconquer your own home for the holiday. And, ladies and gentlemen, so much depends upon what actually works for you. In other words, see what really improves your observance of the day. For instance, we used to, in my family, open gifts on Christmas early in the morning. But the custom sort of developed of opening a few after we got back from midnight mass. Not many, just a couple of the smaller ones.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really know why that started, but it did.
You probably couldn't just you couldn't hold in your excitement. You just need a little taste.
Maybe.
Dip your toes in the water.
Maybe, but it became part of our family thing. There were small gifts, never the big ones.
Yeah.
Similarly with Jewish families on Christmas, they frequently go to Chinese restaurants.
Oh, like Christmas Story.
Like Christmas Story, although they weren't Jewish. But the reason for that is the Chinese restaurants are open at Christmas.
Right. So,
I remember reading years ago a column by Jonathan Gold, who's the LA Times food columnist, whose writing I really love, reminiscing about the Christmases of his boyhood, and how the Jewish population of LA were divided in loyalties between two restaurants, one of which is God, but the other one of which I like very much, the Twin Dragons. And that was the thing. You were a Twin Dragon kid or you were the other thing. That was a big rivalry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, see. Everybody develops their own Christmas costumes. I mean, similarly for Halloween, one of the things I always recommend that people do is turn trick-or-treating into souling.
Souling?
Souling. Well, you see, in days gone by on Halloween, people would go from house to house asking for goodies in return for praying for the dead of that house. And that was called souling, as in S-O-U-L, souling.
So if I'm trick-or-treating, you give me a treat, and then I'll pray for you in return.
Not for me, for my dead.
Oh, for your dead.
Yeah. So that was called souling. Well, that died out with, at some point in England, or Ireland, wherever.
Wow.
But trick-or-treating is a sort of unconscious remembrance of it. And so one of the things you could do is turn it back into souling. How do you do that? By putting into each little bag of goodies a little note asking for prayers for your dead. And when you get your little kids home with their booty, kneeling down as a family and praying for the dead of all of the people that gave you candy.
People are going to... Well, gosh, okay. That's interesting.
People are
So
gonna
do you
want-
actually do that?
I do. I don't have kids, so I don't do the coming back anymore.
Do you...
I put out the little notes.
Has
every
anyone
day.
ever said, I'm offended?
Not once.
Wow, that's a neat little trick. Okay.
Yeah, it is. No, mind you, I couch it in nice terms. I say this is a return to the old tradition of souling, and we'll add even more to this magical night.
Okay.
So much as the presentation.
Yeah.
You can be obnoxious and annoying, and then people will react badly.
Oh, okay. Okay.
You little sinners. You think you're just going to get free candy out of me. It doesn't work that way. Well, that's probably not a smart way to couch it.
You catch more flies with honey.
That's for sure. I know because we've got vats of vinegar outside my door. So far they're empty.
Wow. Okay.
So that's how you do it.
There you go. Okay, that's it for this episode. If you enjoyed listening to Charles, remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you'd like to send Charles a question, you can just click the button that will come up on our end screen right after this. And remember, if it's Monday, it's off the menu. You like that?
I like that very much, what he said. Thanks a lot, ladies and gentlemen, and I'll wish you beforehand a happy Halloween.